The day I almost ruined two lives still haunts me. It was a crisp autumn morning in Asheville, North Carolina, when I first saw them together. Olivia, my goddaughter, her chestnut hair catching the sunlight, laughing with abandon next to a tall, handsome man I'd never seen before. His name I'd later learn was Marcus. The sight of them so carefree and clearly smitten made my stomach churn. I'm Ellen Whitaker, born and raised in these Blue Ridge Mountains, and I've seen this town change over 6 decades. Some folks say I'm set in my ways, and maybe they're right. But that day watching Olivia with Marcus, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't right, I thought. Not because of their skin color. Lord knows we've come a long way since my childhood, but because of who they were, where they came from. How could Olivia, with her private school education and country club memberships, possibly have anything in common with this man? I marched over, plastering on my best church smile. Olivia, darling. Who's your friend? My voice dripped honey, but my eyes were cold as I sized up Marcus. He stood tall, confident, extending his hand. Marcus Thompson, ma'am. Pleased to meet you. His grip was firm, his smile genuine. It only made me more determined. Over the next few weeks, I made it my mission to find out everything I could about Marcus Thompson. He'd grown up in Charlotte, the son of a postal worker and a teacher. Moved to Asheville to start a community outreach program for at-risk youth. Admirable, sure, but hardly the kind of background that would fit into our social circle. I started small. Casual comments to Olivia about how different their worlds were, how hard it must be to bridge that gap. I reached out to my friends on the hospital board, where Olivia's father, my dear friend Robert, served as chief of surgery. Whispered concerns about how this relationship might affect his reputation, his standing in the community. But Olivia and Marcus? They seemed oblivious to my efforts. I'd see them at the farmer's market hand in hand laughing over heirloom tomatoes. Or at the Biltmore estate, picnicking on the lawn, lost in their own world. It made my blood boil. Couldn't they see how impossible this was? Looking back, I wonder, was I really trying to protect Olivia, or was I just scared of change? What do you think drives people to interfere in others' happiness, even when they claim it's for the best? As summer turned to fall, I escalated my efforts. I accidentally ran into Robert at the country club, making sure to mention how I'd seen Marcus in a heated argument outside a bar downtown. It wasn't entirely a lie. I had seen him there, passionately discussing a community project with a colleague. But I let Robert draw his own conclusions. The breaking point came at the annual Whitaker family Thanksgiving. I'd made sure Marcus was invited, determined to show Olivia how out of place he'd be. As we sat around the table, I needled him with questions about his family, his upbringing, his plans for the future. To his credit, Marcus answered each one with grace and honesty. But I could see Olivia's discomfort growing, her eyes darting between Marcus and her father. Finally, Robert cleared his throat. Marcus, son, I think it's time we had a talk about your intentions with my daughter. The room fell silent. I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. What happened next shook me to my core. Marcus stood, his voice steady. Sir, I love your daughter. I know we come from different worlds, but our values, our dreams, they align. I'm not here to take Olivia away from her family or her life. I'm here to add to it, to grow with her. He turned to Olivia, who had tears in her eyes. If you'll have me. The room erupted in chaos. Olivia's mother was sobbing, her brother was clapping Marcus on the back, and Robert was silent, a strange look on his face. As for me, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. What had I done? In the commotion, I slipped out onto the porch, my heart pounding. I'd pushed too far, and now I might lose Olivia forever. The thought made me sick. I don't know how long I stood there, watching the November wind whip through the trees. But suddenly, I felt a presence beside me. It was Marcus. Mrs. Whitaker, he said softly, I know you don't approve of me. Of us. But I want you to know I see how much you love Olivia. How much you want to protect her. I respect that. His words were like a punch to the gut. Here I was, having done everything I could to drive this man away, and he was extending an olive branch. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Marcus continued, I'm not asking for your blessing. I'm asking for a chance. To show you who I am, not who you think I am. In that moment, looking into his eyes, I saw something I'd been blind to before. Faith. Kindness. Love for Olivia that matched my own. I'd like to say I had an immediate change of heart, that I welcomed Marcus with open arms right then and there. But life isn't that simple, is it? No, my journey was just beginning. The next few months were a whirlwind. Olivia and Marcus got engaged, much to my dismay. I put on a brave face, but inside I was seething. I'd failed. Failed to protect Olivia. Failed to maintain the status quo I'd clung to for so long. It all came to a head at Olivia's engagement party. I'd had one too many glasses of champagne, my nerves frayed to breaking point. As Marcus stood to make a toast, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, wobbling slightly, and pointed an accusing finger at him. "You," I slurred, "you think you can just waltz in here and take our Olivia away? You don't belong here. You'll never belong here." The room fell silent. Olivia's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Marcus stood there, shock and hurt evident in his eyes. And Robert looked at me with a mixture of disappointment and anger I'd never seen before. As the gravity of what I'd done sank in, I turned and fled. I ran out into the night, not caring where I was going. I ended up at the edge of the property, by the old oak tree where Olivia used to play as a child. And there, under that ancient tree, I broke down and wept. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually I heard footsteps approaching. It was Robert. "Ellen," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "what have you done?" I looked up at him, my oldest friend, and saw the pain in his eyes. I don't know, Robert. I thought I was protecting her. But no. I've ruined everything. Robert sat down beside me, sighing deeply. You know, when I first met Marcus, I had my doubts too. But I watched him with Olivia. I saw how he looked at her, how he supported her dreams. And I realized something, Ellen. Love, real love. It doesn't care about where you come from or what you have. It cares about who you are. His words hit me like a ton of bricks. Had I been so blinded by my own prejudices that I couldn't see what was right in front of me? What have I done, Robert? I whispered, the weight of my actions crushing me. You've made a mistake, Ellen. A big one. But it's not too late to make it right. Robert's words echoed in my mind as I drove home that night, the streets of Asheville a blur through my tear-filled eyes. I hardly recognized the woman staring back at me in the rearview mirror. How had I become this person? The next morning, reality hit like a freight train. My phone was buzzing incessantly with messages and missed calls. News travels fast in a small town, and my outburst had become the talk of Asheville overnight. I scrolled through my notifications, each one a knife to my heart. My sister Caroline. Ellen, how could you? I'm ashamed to call you my sister. My neighbor Beth. I always thought you were better than this, Ellen. Even my pastor had left a message, his disappointment palpable in every carefully chosen word. But it was the silence that hurt the most. No message from Olivia. No calls from the friends I'd known for decades. The isolation was suffocating. I mustered the courage to go to my weekly bridge club, hoping to find some semblance of normalcy. As I walked in, the room fell silent. Mrs. Peterson, my partner for 20 years, quietly excused herself and found another seat. I stood there alone, feeling the weight of every judgmental stare. That afternoon, I received a letter from the hospital board. They were re-evaluating my position in light of recent events. The charity I'd chaired for a decade suggested I take a step back. In the span of 24 hours, the life I'd built, the respect I'd earned, it was all crumbling around me. Dinner that night was a lonely affair. I pushed food around my plate, the TV news droning in the background. Suddenly I heard my name. I looked up to see my own face plastered across the screen, a candid shot from Olivia's engagement party. The headline read, "Local Socialites Outburst Exposes Lingering Prejudices in Asheville Elite." I switched off the TV, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about me anymore. My actions had cast a shadow over our entire community, reopening old wounds and raising uncomfortable questions. As I lay in bed that night, sleep eluding me, I realized the true cost of my actions. I'd not only hurt Olivia and Marcus, but I'd let down an entire community that had trusted me to be better. The weight of my mistake pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. In the darkness of my room, I made a promise to myself. I would make this right, no matter how long it took, no matter how hard it might be. I had to, not just for Olivia and Marcus, but for myself, for the woman I used to be and the woman I wanted to become. Little did I know the journey to redemption would be the hardest and most rewarding challenge of my life. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. Olivia wouldn't return my calls. Marcus, ever the gentleman, sent a polite but distant email saying he understood my concerns but hoped we could move past them. I felt lost, adrift in a sea of my own making. It was then that I decided to do something I'd never done before. I volunteered at Marcus's community center. I wanted to understand his world, to see what I'd been so afraid of. At first it was awkward. The kids eyed me suspiciously, this overdressed older lady trying to help with after-school programs. But slowly, day by day, I began to see the beauty in what Marcus had created. The hope in the eyes of the children, the sense of community, the sheer joy of people coming together to help one another. One afternoon, as I was helping a young girl with her reading, I looked up to see Marcus standing in the doorway. Our eyes met, and for a moment neither of us knew what to say. Finally, I stood up, my heart pounding. "Marcus," I said, my voice shaking, "I owe you an apology. No more than that. I owe you my deepest, most sincere regret for how I've treated you. I was wrong. So very wrong." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then he walked over and took my hands in his. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said softly, "thank you. That means more than you know." From that day forward, things began to change. Slowly at first, then with gathering speed. I threw myself into helping at the community center. I reached out to Olivia, not asking for forgiveness, but offering my support in any way she needed. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear. As I helped Olivia with her dress, tears in both our eyes, she hugged me tight. "I'm so glad you're here, Aunt Ellen," she whispered. And as I watched Olivia and Marcus exchange vows, I felt a profound shift within myself. I saw not just two individuals but two families, two communities coming together. And I realized that in trying to keep things the same, I'd almost missed out on something beautiful. Years have passed since that day. Olivia and Marcus now have two beautiful children, and I'm proud to say I'm their doting great-aunt. The community center has grown, touching more lives than we ever thought possible. Me. I'm still learning, still growing, still striving to be better. I look back on that autumn day when I first saw Olivia and Marcus together, and I barely recognized the woman I was. Fear can make us do terrible things, but love can transform us in ways we never imagined. So I ask you this: have you ever found love in an unexpected place? Have you ever had your preconceptions challenged and come out better for it? Share your stories, your experiences. Let's learn from each other, grow together. Because at the end of the day, love is love, and it has the power to change us all. Don't forget to follow for more stories of love, redemption, and the beautiful complexity of human relationships. And remember, there's a whole playlist of exclusive stories waiting for you, stories that will make you laugh, cry, and believe in the transformative power of love. Hit that notification bell and let's continue this journey together. After all, every ending is just a new beginning in disguise. If you were in Olivia and Marcus's shoes, could you forgive someone like me? Someone who tried to tear apart your love based on their own misguided fears? It's not an easy question, is it? But that's the beauty of life and love. It's complicated, messy, and often surprising. Now I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to forgive someone who wronged you? Or maybe you were the one needing forgiveness. And hey, if you enjoyed this little slice of my life, why not stick around for more? Hit that follow button and turn on those notifications. Trust me, we've got a whole playlist of stories that'll tug at your heartstrings and maybe even change your perspective a little. Remember, every like, every follow, every comment, it's not just a number. It's a connection. It's a way of saying, I hear you, I see you, and maybe, just maybe, we can learn from each other.